So now we're going to move on to Jessica Bartolone. She is at New Innovations. She's the product success manager. So go ahead, Jessica.
I appreciate everything that Michelle said, and it resonates with me as well. In terms of, I often ask, like, how did I end up at a technology company, where that wasn't anything I ever planned? And then I think, well, I didn't actually plan to work, in medical education either. So it's, funny how I think all of us have the story of how we ended up where we ended up. And if I think about my story starts with, I thought I was going to be a public relations person. And I really found it fascinating to turn negative things into positives. And that was something, that resonated with me. So I was like, I'm going to do PR. Well, I didn't end up doing PR because I had this, I want to call it a gift, a talent, where I helped my classmates in college. I have a communications degree, and I helped them figure out how to graduate. So I was like, no, you want to, in spring, they only offer that. So you have to make sure this is your schedule. So I was like putting this puzzle together, and I really, really liked doing that. And that path of trying to figure out a pathway to graduate was something that really, in a nerdy way, resonated with me, where I was like, oh, yay, they're going to graduate because I helped them. And that's how I decided I wanted to work in, at the time, higher education. And the path, long story short, is I was a registrar at a nursing college. That was a good time because it had all of the things that I love to do. A registrar is in charge of the schedule, the grades, and everything. So that experience was also hard because it was a smaller hospital. We were going through Higher Learning Commission accreditation. So then I'm learning about the process of becoming accredited. And, there's just so many, regulatory governing type things. I'm sure all of us know about that. And basically, I saw an opportunity, which was to work local, but work for Ohio University's Opti. And the hospital that I was at was down the road, basically. So I worked, a mile away or something from where medical students were. So I'm like, wow, there's a presence of Ohio University medical students local. I had no idea. I didn't even know, think about this. I didn't even know how you became a doctor. And that's truly what's, humbling, where, I could ramble on about every specialty right now, and, the accreditation process and, credentialing. So at the time, though, looking back from, my lens back then, it was very much, oh, they have to, what do you mean they match into, a residency program? And those types of things, especially looking at this through the eyes of the beginner, I think about that, where I was like, wait, I thought you just like dreamed about becoming an orthopedic surgeon and you interview and then that's how it works, right? No, it was that. So that, to me, uncovering that was really like eye-opening. But they hired me, so I worked for Ohio University's Opti. And again, there was like five or six, clinical sites. Their presence was there. There was a graduate medical education program there as well, obviously. And basically, I think I did that for 2 years. And I remember, I feel like this story is important, that the person who was like my administrative assistant knew the job. And I always thought it was weird that she was training me. And I asked her why she never applied for my role. And she said, it's because I don't have that piece of paper you do. And so I do think about that moment where I said, so you would want to do this job. And, I then kind of did like my college advising type thing. And I pursued my master's degree in higher education administration, like somewhere in the blurry past that I did that. So I encouraged her to get her bachelor's degree if she wanted to, and if this was a career path. So one thing I am really proud of is when you have those types of like having to pause and going, wait a minute, you're really smart and you're training me. Why aren't you in this role? I felt like that completely helped that this narrative where this person was, I want to say, resentful, where that was like a narrative that, but it was not true. And it takes, connection, conversation, empathy to uncover those. So I'm proud to say when I was offered a role for the graduate medical education side, she was my replacement because she had earned her degree. And I think about, uplifting your colleagues. And those are the moments that I'm proud of and why I loved, working in that atmosphere. But now I'm on the dark side, graduate medical education. So in that respect, what I learned is I didn't know anything. And that to me, I always have that empathy, being that I work for, a major vendor in the game of, everyone that's new and not understanding the complexity of medical education and, all the nuances that, so many tools that you have to use and so many, entities. Essentially, I ended up, what did I end up doing? I ended up closing down a hospital. So that moment came it was shocking. I want to say Hahnemann, most people should be familiar with Hahnemann, but definitely read about it if you're not, because Hahnemann was something that really, I think, jolted the medical education community in the sense that you had so many learners, having displaced. And again, at the time, I didn't know what I didn't know. And what I learned a lot about the record retention and, what do you do when your hospital closes? And I think there's just so many things that I learned about, even with, there's this gray area, these blurred lines where you have, your accrediting body, the ACGME, and then you have this other, the specialties accrediting governance structure, and then another structure is CMS, that dotted line. And, there's like a business operation side. And I think about things differently now because of that. And essentially, wow, I learned a lot, but we had to hire an attorney to teach me those things. And I definitely would not say I'm a subject matter expert on anything like that. But all of that was definitely, I think, one of the greatest joys. I know one of the greatest joys is watching the residents graduate, watching them grow their career development, seeing them as the nervous, who I want, and then becoming that, chief. They walk differently, I think. They definitely talk differently, but that was honestly the greatest joy that I've had, that working in, medical education. And then it was so tragic to me because we learned the hospital was closing 6 months. Like, I think I just paid the vendor for, where we were going to have the event. And then it was like, oh my gosh, we have all these new residents. They just moved to Ohio. What am I going to do? I don't know anything. What am I going to do for my career? I end up interviewing. I thought I had to relocate. And one thing that I think is important is that the job is stressful. And I experienced like major burnout because I was working in an empty hospital, packing up those files that I was talking about of who's going to retain those records for those doctors. And 3 months of working in an empty hospital really impacted me. I have a yoga teacher background, so that was what truly kept me sane, is, the mindfulness techniques and well-being. Like I'm such an advocate for talking about, normalizing those types of things and saying, I experienced burnout and I didn't even know it at the time. And I was pouring from an empty cup. And, I think that happens a lot where we try to be like these martyrs where it's like, I could do this, and I couldn't. And I didn't have a support system because nobody was at the hospital. So I think, if anything, one of the biggest takeaways that I kudos to this, I call it, like, there's this secret Facebook group. And I think that is the best thing that has happened in a long time, because the support you can get from peers, that validation, that happens to you too, that me too is so powerful. So for, God bless that Facebook group, because I do really think the best learning you could ever do is from your very smart peers, or, that empowerment, that encouragement, and normalizing, I need help, and in normalizing, these aspects that I think we all just want to keep it together, act like, we're fine, or we know things. And I think I'm the first person to say, I didn't know that, and I'm unlearning things that I thought were true. And I think that really the biggest thing is seek your peers' support, and just know when you feel like you're drowning and keeping your head above water, it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to acknowledge that. And I think for me, I know I didn't actually, and that actually was why I didn't end up taking any of these roles working out there. I call it, on the front line, just because I was so burnt out that I thought, where could I make the most impact? So anyone that, thinks that they could, work in technology, I am proof that you can. And the last thing I want to say about what I thought about the technologies, I don't know if you know the movie like Big with Tom Hanks. I really thought I'd show up, I'd be like, so here's my brilliant idea, and then it would, and so it will be, right? It doesn't work that way. I thought so. Like the other example would be, what's really cool is like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I joke around with the developers; they don't like this joke. Where it's like, well, it's so cool. I'm like watching how the chocolate's made, and it's like, and there's all you Oompa Loompas, and they don't like that. I'm sure Terry can talk about that. Where it's like, I just thought totally differently about how it worked, and I'm like, this is the way we should do it, and so it shall be. I'm working on that acceptance. Where I recommend, if you are interested in technology, though, to think holistically, big picture, outcomes driven. And the pair of my transferable skills is quality improvement and agile. That's a thing, agile methodology. So I would recommend reading up on that.
Thank you so much, Jessica. That was really great. And it's great to hear from a perspective of new innovations, because I think a lot of coordinators do think of that pathway a lot. So thank you.